I had never heard of this movie until a couple days ago when I just randomly saw a clip of it on YouTube. Now, if you're like me and you spend too much time on YouTube, and you probably do, right? You're watching this video right now on YouTube, then undoubtedly you know how this works. You go on to YouTube, probably you have something specific that you're intending to look for or to watch, but as soon as you get to the home page, you see a bunch of random videos just being recommended to you, and one of them will catch your eye and you think, well, okay, I'll just quickly check this out. And I think this was a YouTube Shorts video, but it was a short clip from this movie, Mickey 17. Without getting into which clip, because I'll talk about the movie in more detail in a minute, the clip intrigued me. And I Googled it and looked for it and found out that it was a movie that recently got released. And I had never heard of it. Now, I say that a lot on this channel when talking about movies. Like, there was this movie that came out 3 years ago. I never heard of it, just finding it out about it now, etc. And I usually blame this on having been living abroad for the past 24 years. This movie came out, according to Wikipedia, it got released in the US back in March, at which point I had actually been back in the US for several months. So I can't blame the fact that I live abroad anymore and the fact that I didn't hear about the new movies. I guess I'm just out of it. I mean, where do people go nowadays to hear about new movies? I remember they used to get reviewed in the local papers, but anyways, I'm digressing. Point being, I had never heard about this movie until I randomly saw a clip on YouTube. And it looked intriguing to me, so I looked on the Wikipedia page, but I deliberately didn't read the summary of the movie. I just checked it out briefly, saw it was a new movie. I clicked on the critical response to see if it had gotten good reviews and found out that it had gotten good reviews. And because it looked like it had a science fiction movie that had a few twists and turns in it, I again deliberately tried not to read anything about the plot. But it looked like it might be interesting to watch. I used to watch a lot of these types of science fiction movies. I haven't watched them recently for a number of reasons. One is just having kids, etc. But used to waste a lot of time watching these types of science fiction movies. And I thought to myself, you know, it's been a while since I watched a good science fiction movie. Maybe it's time to just treat myself to a nice, interesting science fiction movie. This seems like it has gotten good reviews. And I checked to see if it was available on any of the streaming services I had access to. And sure enough, it's available on HBO Max, which I've got access to. So I thought, yeah, maybe I'll check this out. Now, I did... Without getting too much into the details of my personal life, I don't have a lot of time these days to watch movies. I'm busy with a bunch of stuff, and I've got 2 young kids, and they stay up later than I would like, and kind of the only time I might have time to catch a movie might be on Friday or Saturday night after they go to bed, and when I know I don't have to wake up early for work the next day. So Saturday night, I had time after they went to bed, and I thought I could catch one movie this week. One movie a week is about my limit. Now, I did think to myself, because I have been watching a few movies the past couple weeks, but those have been historical dramas. Now that I'm getting out into the wider range of just broader fictional films, I all of a sudden thought to myself about all the movies which have come out in the past 10 years, which I haven't seen yet. And I'm like, okay, got one night this week to watch a movie. Maybe I should see this one or this one or this one or this one. I just thought of all these big blockbuster movies that had been out in theaters and I haven't gotten around to seeing them. And I was wondering if Mickey 17 would be the best way to spend my movie this week. But it looked to me like it had gotten good reviews just based on the Wikipedia article. And I thought, well, let's give it a chance. I mention all that as background because in the end, this was a movie that maybe was not worth my time. So it was perhaps the wrong choice of the way to spend my Saturday night. But, that's what you get when you go to the movies. Huh? Some of them are good, some of them are bad. You take a chance on a movie, you win some, you lose some. But yeah, let's get into the review. Oh, sorry, one more thing. After I watched it and was a little bit disappointed with how disappointing the movie was, I did spend the next day watching some reviews on YouTube, and almost every review I watched had the same opinion that I did, which is this is a movie that had some interesting ideas and a lot of potential, but it did not come together, and there were a whole bunch of things that were set off but never paid off properly. And that's how I felt when I watched this movie, and that's basically every review I saw of it. So I don't know, I guess the Wikipedia article maybe was... I got the impression that this movie had been generally favorably reviewed, but the YouTube reviewers seem to be much closer to my own opinion. And I'll talk about it in a little bit more detail, but basically that's my opinion. Interesting ideas, not a great follow-through, a number of things set up that didn't pay off, and a number of things that just didn't make sense, and some tonal inconsistencies as well. That is my review in miniature. I'm going to talk about it more and get into spoilers. The movie, I didn't realize this until after I had seen it and was watching some of these reviews on YouTube. I guess the movie was highly anticipated by a lot of people because it was directed by a guy named Bong Joon-ho, who's a South Korean director and who's famous for doing Parasite. And I guess this was his follow-up film to Parasite. Now, I've never seen Parasite. It's one of the mini films from the past 10 years that I haven't gotten around to seeing because, young kids and starting a family and stuff like that. It's gotten a lot of very good reviews, hasn't it? So maybe I'll track down that movie one of these days. But a lot of people really excited about this movie because it was from the same director as Parasite. So the movie, it's got a lot of things going on, but I guess the initial premise of it is it's a character who dies multiple times, but each time he gets reborn through a cloning machine. And this sets up some interesting philosophical territory. Maybe philosophical is a little bit of a too big a word for this. Maybe it's just interesting things to think about. But it's interesting to think about these things. And it's not the first movie to deal with this type of thing. And it reminded me of other science fiction movies that I've seen. So one of them, which springs to mind, is a movie called The Sixth Day. It's an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. It came out in 2000. I saw it in the theaters in 2000. I don't know why. I had a friend who wanted to see it back in those days. I used to just go to the theaters a lot on a whim. If memory serves, it was not a great movie. But it did have a few interesting scenes about cloning. And one scene that has stuck with me these 25 years later, even though I've forgotten the rest of the film, was there's a scene when the bad guy is shot and he's dying. And he's got these clones of himself ready to go. So he uploads the memories to his clone, and then the clone comes alive. And the clone comes alive, and because the guy has uploaded his memories to it, the first thing the clone said is like, "Oh, I've been shot." But then he remembers that he's a clone. He's like, "Oh no, that was you," pointing to the guy, the real guy. And then the clone starts to take the guy's clothes off. He says, well, I better get dressed. And the guy, as he's dying from the bullet wound, says, aren't you even going to wait for me to die before you take my clothes? And the clone says, would you? And he's a movie villain, so he's just kind of classically over-the-top evil. Doesn't even wait for the dignity of his former self to die before taking his clothes. But the horrified look on the original's face as his clone is taking off his clothes and just leaving him to die made me think, and I think would make anybody think, about how it's kind of a bit of a win-lose preserving your memories in a clone. I mean, on the one hand, you are continuing to live by uploading the memories in the clone. On the other hand, the thing that's continuing to live, in one sense, is you, because it's got all your memories and your consciousness. But in the other sense, it's not you, because you're over here dying. Well, the clone is starting his life. And so, yeah, there's that thing where two consciousnesses are being created. And it's like, is it like a 50-50 chance which body you're going to end up in? Are you going to end up in the clone, or are you going to stay in the original body? But it's not really a 50-50 chance, is it? Because the clone is something that's newly being created, and you are still stuck in your body. But it must have seemed to the clone that he got lucky by having his consciousness transferred into the body that was still living. And I don't know, just the nature of whether or not having your memories transferred into a new body, even as your old body is dying, is a way of immortality, or whether you're still dying. That question stuck with me. And there was a Black Mirror episode, I think this was the Black Mirror White Christmas episode, which was kind of similar ideas. Now, in this case, it wasn't a clone, it was a computer program that had the people would transfer their consciousness to. And then the computer program, if you remember this one, this was the episode with John Hamm from Mad Men. The computer program had to be trained to be a personal assistant to the real thing, although the computer program had all the memories and consciousness of the person that they transferred it from. So they thought that they were, from their perspective, they just woke up all of a sudden and had been ripped out of their bodies. Does any of this make sense? Point being, the idea of having your consciousness transferred to a clone, I think, raises some interesting philosophical issues, or maybe just some interesting things to think about over a cup of coffee type issues about the nature of our individuality, and the nature of our mortality, and the nature of whether we would cheat mortality by transferring our consciousness to another vessel, or whether when we die, we would still die. And that is maybe the central issue of this movie, although, like a lot of things in this movie, it doesn't entirely make sense. So here's my problem with the way they deal with it in the movie. It is set up at one point that he has to do weekly updates to the memory block to make sure that his memory files are kept up to date. So when he dies and then they regenerate him with the clone, they're putting in the up-to-date memories. That is clearly set up, but yet, after that's set up, it's implied multiple times subsequently in the movie that when he dies, the clone, the new clone that's created, has the memories of the previous death, meaning that the clone is somehow getting the benefit of the memories right up until the time of death. Now, how that's being preserved and transferred over to the memory blocks and stuff like that, I don't know. Then, after they go so long in implying that the clone has a memory of having died and all the previous experiences of dying, then they create. So at one point, one of the clones doesn't die, but everybody thinks it dies, and then they create a new clone. And that new clone is completely oblivious to the fact that his predecessor didn't die. And so then that indicates that whatever magical connections was transferring these memories is not in effect. It's a premise which doesn't make sense even by its own logic, is what I'm trying to say. Or the even by the rules of the movie, it's completely inconsistent what the basic premise of this movie is. And there are a lot of things in this movie like that, where it is set up one way and then operates on a different set of rules. And yeah. So to back up a bit, the reason he ends up becoming what they call an expendable, which is somebody who whose job is to die over and over again, because they always have a clone backup of him, is because he has to escape the Earth because there's a gangster loan shark who likes to chop up people who's haven't paid him on time. And in one of many details in this movie which are not explained properly, there's a whole bunch of people trying to leave Earth all at once. Why? It's not explained. And there's some sort of political / religious figure who has this sort of ship which everybody wants to get on, or a bunch of people want to get on. Again, why? It's not explained. And the reason that he gets on, our hero, Mickey, is because he just signs up to be an expendable without actually reading the fine print about what an expendable is and why they have to die over and over again, or that the job basically involves dying over and over again. Now, the beginning parts of this movie are set up like a black comedy. So he dies in all these different ways, and there's it's a kind of movie where you're watching it and you're like, okay, yeah, this is interesting, but then you're like, well, but why am I finding this interesting? Am I a good person for finding this interesting? Because you just watch him die over and over again, and you watch everyone else be so callous about his death, and it's a bit of a black comedy like that, and you're just kind of watching to see the next way that he's going to die. And there's one scene where he's out in space dying, and then some sort of spinning propeller cuts off his hand, and his hand is floating away, and everyone's kind of saying, "Whoa, look at that!" And just being very callous about the fact that he's getting maimed by this equipment and is left out to die there, because who cares? They're just going to get a new clone of him back anyways. And in fact, even before the montage of all these different versions of him dying in gruesome ways begins, the tone of the movie is already set up to be a black comedy, because we see the loan shark dealing with a delinquent debtor being cut up right in front of him while he's having his meal, and another way that's playing as this black comedy. There's, I guess there's a ghoulish macabre. I think that's the way the word is pronounced, right? Macabre factor in here, where you are just looking at all these different people getting cut up or dying in these ways, and you're like, oh, okay. For my amusement, I like to watch people die. And you know, I guess for whatever reason, there's a certain part of us that are interested in these kind of macabre stories. But the movie feels like it's cheating to me because none of the people are reacting in any sort of realistic way. So with science fiction, you have to give the premise a little bit of space. So for example, interstellar space travel is impossible and probably will always be impossible. There's just certain physical laws that are going to prohibit it no matter what the technology. But when you watch a science fiction movie, you waive that. You say, okay, for the purpose of this science fiction movie and getting this story started, I'm going to pretend that interstellar space travel is possible. I'm going to pretend that cloning is possible. I'm going to pretend that it's possible to preserve all your memories and consciousness in this computer block. But then once you've given that space, you expect that the movie will operate in a way that normal people would operate in these situations. And that's the beauty of science fiction, right? If these technologies were possible, how would humans react in these situations? It's kind of a what-if scenario. This one though is everyone is reacting way too casually or unconcerned about the fact that Mickey keeps dying in all these ways, and there are even shots of the technicians not even bothering to put the table out for him as the new body is coming out of the machine because they're distracted playing a video game and stuff like that. And again, it's all being played for black comedy. So as I was watching this, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to have to switch my expectations. This is not a science fiction movie. This is some sort of black comedy I'm watching. And, you know, when you're watching like a black comedy, like if you're watching a Monty Python sketch or something like that, you wouldn't expect people to exhibit real human emotions. You'd expect it to just be kind of this absurdist, ridiculous type farce thing, which it kind of is. But then the movie pivots over to trying to make you care about these characters. And you're like, wait, movie, what are you doing? We already set the tone that we don't care about anything, nothing matters here, and this is just some zany black comedy. And then the movie switches tone again, where as they encounter the native inhabitants on the planet they land on, and one character wants to wipe them out, then the other character, forget her name, the girlfriend character, starts making these very big speeches and starts doing a lot of shouting about how evil the other character is. And I was like, okay, what? Now, where did all this shouting come from? I didn't realize this was going to be such a shouty movie near the end. And yeah, this just basic tonal inconsistency, as well as things not making sense, as well as the movie's failure to adhere to the rules that it set up, I think, stop this movie from succeeding. And to a certain extent, maybe break the engagement with it. Because if it was entertaining, maybe all other sins would be forgiven. But at a certain point, this movie started to lose me. So I remember I was watching this on a Saturday night. It was after the kids had gone to bed. I'm not used to staying up late anymore because, you know, I've got rising early morning for my job most mornings and stuff like that. So it was like I put the movie on around shortly before 10 o'clock. It was shortly after 11. I was starting to feel tired. I said, okay, well, this movie's got to be almost over. And then I clicked the little remote control to see how much time was remaining. And it was like an hour and 10 minutes left. And I was like, what? I've got to watch an hour. And it was, it turns out the movie is like 2 hours and 18 minutes long or something like that. So this is a long movie to strap in for. I mean, I know it's not Lord of the Rings long, but it's on the long side of things. It's not a quick movie. Now there are things that are of interest all the way through the movie. It never completely comes to a dead halt. But as you're watching it, just the list of things that do not make any sense just keep adding up and up and up. I'm not going to try to list all of the things. For one thing, they're pretty obvious. If you watch the movie, you won't need my help identifying them. And for another thing, it would take a lot of time to list all of them, and I've only got 5 minutes left on this review. The camera I'm using automatically cuts out after 30 minutes. But yeah, if you watch the movie, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. A whole bunch of stuff that doesn't make sense, and a whole bunch of stuff which is set up but never paid off. And yeah, that between the two of those, I think it makes it easy to disengage with the movie. Now, I said I wasn't going to list everything, but I'll talk about some stuff, because you got to talk about something, right? So why Mickey 17 and 18 have such different personalities? That was something that seemed like it was maybe going somewhere, but then never went anywhere. So I was thinking there was going to be some explanation about the human consciousness, or about how every time the clone got recreated, it was a different part of the brain it was feeding off of, or maybe when you clone somebody exactly, you don't really recreate their personality or something. But we were led, the viewers were led all the way through the movie to believe that each time a clone was regenerated of Mickey, it was the exact same Mickey. And then all of a sudden, Mickey 18 just has this much more aggressive personality than Mickey 17. There was some sort of childhood trauma about a car accident involving his mother, in which he pushed some sort of button, which again is set up, never goes anywhere. It's hinted near the end that he's misremembering it. That doesn't go anywhere. There's some sort of religious element to this cult that they're on in the spaceship, where there's this politician type leader played by Mark Ruffalo, set up but doesn't go anywhere. The wife of the political leader, political/religious leader, has an obsession with sauces, which seems to come out of nowhere and doesn't seem to go anywhere. Here I said I wasn't going to list everything, and I'm starting to list everything. There's just so many things here which don't make sense. But the biggest scene, the biggest sin is that the movie just starts to drag in the middle, and I think it catches my attention again near the climax, although the very ending of it is another kind of drawn out scene that drags on a bit. A whole bunch of stuff that doesn't make sense, even beyond the stuff I've already talked about. There's so much more things here that don't make sense. So some interesting ideas in this movie, and it's not the worst movie I've ever seen. It held my attention, at least for parts of it. But well, yeah. It's good that the movie is at least to some degree interesting, but you gotta have more respect for your audience than this movie has. I don't know what happened during the writing or editing or production part of this movie that so many things just are set up and don't pay off, or so many things don't make sense. And then it in addition to that, it drags in parts. That's the review.